Dustin.
Hey, Hooper.
It's time for the show.
Is it that time already?
It's that time already.
Okay.
People can join us, sit down, hang out, welcome, and greetings.
Salutations.
Are you back at work?
Not yet.
Okay.
Close. Soon. Hopefully.
Gotcha.
We'll see.
Yeah.
How about you? Are you back in full swing?
I'm not in full swing, but I'm in a swing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Half swing.
I like to think I'm Supermaning it. You
Okay.
know, like when
sure.
You know what that move is?
Yeah, you put
swing?
it on your
Yeah.
You put it on your chest and
But do you know, I don't know about you, because for me, where I grew up, Supermaning it was you didn't just like strap it across your chest and pretend you were flying. You would be swinging like normal, like up and down, and when you're going up at the crest of facing forward and you're back to the ground, you then turn and do a 180 with your body in that mid swing, and then you land chest into the thing, and that's when you go back down the arc, and you're doing that on your belly as Superman. I'm
not sure I understand, but sweet.
So imagine you're in a swing, and you're going
right.
you're going
like
up,
normal,
and then back, and so your feet are down, up, and so you're swinging, and you're pretty much going as high as you can go.
Right.
So at the very crest of up,
yep.
Keep your left hand on the chain, but swing your body to where it's turned around.
Yep.
And then you land chest on the swing, and then while you're still up. And then as you're going down, you're on your chest and you're flying like Superman.
No, see, what we would do is we would start on our legs, right? Like, because the idea is like you're a Superman. You're going from standing to flying. So you start standing and you run and just land in the swing. And the momentum carried by your running legs then carries you up.
Got it. Okay. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. I witnessed some kids doing this crazy.
You must have went to school with Olympians or something, doing flips and whatnot.
I went to private school, and in private school they taught us how to do a lot of reckless shit, because you probably weren't paying for it.
Right.
Yeah, the thing is, if you messed up that move in midair, you just go face down on gravel.
You're a goner.
You go from Superman to real life Christopher Reeve. Let's talk about 2001: A Space Odyssey.
You can't come back from that. Just go.
Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
So over the weekend, I actually did watch 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay.
Boy, I really didn't expect to have to pivot to this so quickly.
Yeah, just go. Don't look back.
2001: A Space Odyssey came out in 1968, I believe. I don't have anything pulled up because I didn't expect to make a horribly poor-tasted joke that I had to pivot away from. 2001: A Space Odyssey was directed by Stanley Kubrick. It was released in 1968. It's referred to as an epic science fiction film. It produced and directed by Stanley Kubrick, but I feel like that's pretty normal to produce and direct a film.
Yeah.
I own this movie on Blu-ray. I don't know if I own an anniversary edition of this or what, but I decided, and I was very vocal about it on this show, that I was going to check it out. Oh, wow, you've been in the wrong channel the whole time. It's okay. You've been centered. It's cool.
Okay. Got you.
So the film it's hard to describe what the plot of the movie. Have you seen this?
I have not.
You've never seen this? Okay.
I've never seen it. I also, so long story short, we were supposed to screen that this year at my theater. And so I was really looking forward to getting to see it and on the big screen.
Yeah.
And then COVID-19 happened. And so,
man.
Yeah,
well,
but it's all good.
This is based on a screenplay written by Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke. He had a whole book series of I guess it was called Space Odyssey. He had a series. I think there was a sequel to this in I think it was the 70s called what was it called? It was like 2010, the year we make contact or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know much about the extended, universe of all these movies and
Sure.
all that crap, but I do know that this is considered the quintessential science fiction film.
Yes. Yep.
And the first time I saw this movie, I was 10 years old and I was on a plane. And my mom, the only choices of the in-flight movie were 2001: A Space Odyssey or Shakespeare in Love. And my mom picked this one for me because it didn't have breasts. So I saw this extremely slow-paced and surreal film at what must have been like 8 or 9 on a plane. And I had no idea what was happening because the plot's very... It's one of those essay films that I always talk about where it's really less about the plot and it's more about what it's trying to say, I guess, which is I don't know what. I'd say this. It's worth since you haven't seen it, Dustin, and I would say that especially if you are a fan of cinema, it's a must because it's the film.
Yes.
There's a whole lot of stuff going on special effects wise in this movie that I'm not even sure how they did it. It could be, probably a mixture of matte paintings. There's definitely matte paintings involved, set extensions, picture in picture, probably, miniatures, but some really good looking stuff. And, the score in particular is really, really good. In this movie, a lot of famous pieces of classical music are in this film. But there's also like a creepy music theme every time you see the monolith. Which just sounds like a bunch of ghouls going for like 8 minutes.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's terrifying. So the film, what would I give it? I think I gave it like probably 3.5 stars overall. Because for me, it's extremely slow. It's an extremely slow paced film, and that is okay. I'm sort of struggling to see how audiences grasped this in the 60s. Maybe they didn't. But the visuals, the score, the themes are all breathtaking, especially for 1968. It definitely deserves its acclaim. The pace is extremely slow, so I wouldn't really say it's necessarily the most engaging viewing experience, but it also deserves to be seen and studied and discussed. A lot of people like to talk about the ending, and it spans like the beginning of time, or hominid humans, like apes, and then kind of cuts forward to like space travel, we have like a moon base and we're going to go to, what the hell's the name of the base they go to? I forgot. And then it cuts even further, or 18 months after that, to where you meet the astronauts aboard with the HAL 9000 computer. And so it's pretty much like it sort of takes place in vignettes, but it's trying to say an overall something.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth a watch, but if I can see how younger people today would never get into it because it's just, it's philosophical and it's really, really subjective. It's not expressly stated what the monolith is. The monolith in the film, essentially shows up, and then like after the monolith shows up with the apes, the next day they figure out how to learn how to use tools, and they figure out how to use tools to like subjugate and beat the other apes. And then, then the astronauts find the monolith on the moon, and something happens. And the next thing you see is, we're even further into space travel. So some people think it's like, symbolizes, evolution, the next step forward. There's a lot of theories about the monolith and the weird ending and this Stargate thing that happens. So you'd really have to watch the film and then read up on all the themes and all the theories about what it's supposed to mean.
Sure.
But Kubrick himself said, especially in the years after this was made, the years leading up to his death, like I'm not going to really tell people that they have to feel one way or the other about the film or what it means. It's subjective. And so that was a very filmmakery and very correct thing to say about the film, which is just like, I don't know, it means something to me, but it also can mean other things to other people. And
sure.
I don't know. I guess I'd recommend it. I mean, again, if you're looking for a fun space epic, this is not it. If you're looking to be intellectually, for lack of a better word, probed, then this is probably the movie. So, but sure. see it on a large screen and with a good sound system and stuff too. This is where HAL 9000 comes on, which is like what all futuristic AI is based on, is measured against the HAL 9000. Most I'd say most directly as Gertie from Moon. Where you think of it, that same
or the steering wheel of the ship in Wall-E.
Yes,
I think is modeled after HAL 9000.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is, and and then how again? I don't want to go into too much, but everyone knows "Open the Pod Bay Doors." HAL. Everyone kind of knows that HAL at some point, opposes the humans on the ship. So for the reasons this and that, and it's really nefarious. And at the time, that must have been mind blowing. Like the two astronauts are talking, like, "Hey, do you think HAL is," basically they're saying, "Do you think HAL is sabotaging the mission? Well, why would he do that? Can he hear us?" They go inside this little pod, make sure they can't hear him. And at the very end of them talking about like, maybe we should disconnect him. Okay, maybe that's a good idea. Let's check a few things first. But then if that doesn't pan out, we'll disconnect him. And then they cut to like an extreme close up of HAL's light. And then they show his point of view, and it's squarely extreme close-ups of both of their lips. And then it goes to black for the intermission. And you're like, oh shit, he's reading their lips. Yeah. And it's just like, right. It's freaky. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's awesome. It's one of those movies that, is a classic and from what I understand has every right to be. Yeah. And it's one that has been around for so long and influenced so many films after that you kind of can't help but kind of know the main beats of the story, even though you haven't seen the film. So for me, it's like, I kind of know a lot about it. Yeah. I just never have sat down to like watch it through. I think I rented it from Blockbuster years ago. Like maybe I was in high school and I rented it from Blockbuster, and I think maybe I got a half hour into it and I had to go do something or go. No, I don't remember what it was. Anyway, the point is I couldn't finish it. And then I just never have ever gone back to it in all these years. So yeah, it's one of those like elusive titles where I'm like, I have to see this. I just never do. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of films like that. You ought to see it. You feel obligated to see it as a cinephile, but you're also like, but I don't feel like watching it.
Yeah. I think everybody has that movie. You know what I mean? Like, like there's some like movie that everybody's like, like you have to see this. This is a classic. This is a must see. And everyone's like, there's just one that everyone's like, I will. I just haven't yet. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. So now that we've covered that, do you want to talk about this Snyder Cut news?
Sure.
All I heard was that it exists, or sorry, it will exist, basically.
So yeah, so I think we all kind of knew like the film doesn't actually exist. Like there was never
the director's cut of Justice League is what you're talking about.
Right. I guess I should back up and give a little detail. So unless you haven't maybe you haven't been following the story, right? So from the beginning, Zack Snyder made Man of Steel, made Batman vs Superman, and the idea was that it would kind of culminate in this Justice League film. And I think Justice League originally was going to be 2 parts. They smushed it into one thing, and that was going to be, I guess, the culmination of this trilogy that he had done.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, there are conflicting stories. Some people say Zack Snyder was not delivering something the studio wanted. The studio got cold feet about what he was bringing in and what they were seeing in dailies and rushes and whatnot, and that eventually they let him go. However, another story is that after Zack Snyder's daughter committed suicide, he stepped down from the project, just, wanting to be with family and whatnot. And that makes sense too. I think there's always been this conspiracy theory that Warner Brothers had been on the way to push him out even before that happened. And regardless, it happened so early in post-production that there was never a fully assembled cut of this film. There just couldn't be. The visual effects weren't finished. They probably would have needed ADR. They would have needed all this stuff that they just hadn't gotten yet. So even though there's, this longstanding theory that Zack Snyder's version of Justice League existed, probably, it existed in pieces, and it existed mostly in his mind. It didn't exist anywhere else. And so famously, Warner Brothers hired Joss Whedon to come in, rewrite the script a little bit, do some reshoots, which included mustachioed Henry Cavill. And they basically overhauled the film. What we got, I know you and I are not super keen on. It is kind of a mess of tones and of styles. Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder have 2 very different styles, and they don't go together very well. So even some of the Zack Snyder stuff that's been kind of recolor timed and re-edited and, I don't know, made brighter, even still it doesn't fit with what Joss would have done with the project. And so you have, awkward humor that doesn't land, and you have like weird reshoots that don't quite fit in, and you have the original stuff that's been kind of retooled to look brighter than it initially was. And so the film was a mess stylistically, but I think beyond that, like my whole thing is I don't think Zack Snyder really understood those characters at all. So the mismatch of styles is sort of the least of my concerns. My concerns begin and end with character and story, and I don't believe that either version.
Hold on just a minute. Sorry, go ahead. I had to go kill a cockroach.
Good. I got you. You're good. So I think my chief concern wasn't necessarily the meshing of 2 opposed styles. It began and ended with characters. And I think you would agree. I mean, I just don't think these characters worked as written. And so I think regardless of what Joss Whedon may have done to try to save it, it just wasn't going to work in Zack Snyder's original version. I don't think the characters were written well enough. And I think he had 2 films to understand Superman and clearly didn't. He had 1 film to understand Batman and he clearly didn't. So I don't have any false assumptions that like Justice League, suddenly he'd be like, oh, I get it now. It just never was going to work, I don't think. But that hasn't stopped the fans, what fans there are of Justice League and of Zack Snyder. They've always been vocal ever since the film's release that they should release a purely Zack Snyder version of this film. Get rid of all the reshoots, get rid of everything Joss Whedon did, get Zack Snyder back on board to finish what he started. And I can see the merit in it, right? Like I can see, okay, the film really should be overseen by one single director. And I totally understand that.
I mean, if the roles were reversed and it was Joss Whedon's movie and then he couldn't finish it because of his family tragedy, and they're like, hey, we hired Zack Snyder, visionary director Zack Snyder, to come in and finish the film. And if it had come out like that, I think we would all be like, man, well, I don't know if we'd be clamoring for the Whedon cut, but what I would be saying is I wish Joss Whedon could have finished the movie himself so we could have at least seen what his vision was for it. So I can definitely see that about it. I just, you know,
I think I don't trust that Zack Snyder's version is actually going to be good. Like it may be solely Zack Snyder
or any better. Like even if it's like, I thought the film was fine. Like it has huge problems, but on an enjoyment level, I was like, well, it's watchable. It's just a mess. And you know, I wouldn't want to see it again, but it was better than I thought it was going to be. But there's nothing that makes me think that Snyder's cut would be even any better than that.
I think there's two things that the fans have kind of clung to. First is that they say, okay, well, it's solely Zack Snyder's vision. Again, I understand that, but I don't think that that's a good thing, because I think in the two previous films he's proven that he doesn't understand. And then the other thing is I do think his version was originally supposed to be more epic. I think I read at one point there was like a 4-hour long assembly at some point of this film, like 3 or 4 hours of Justice League. And I think it got trimmed down to like under 2. Even with the reshoots and all. So Zack Snyder's version was originally a lot longer. It included things like we've learned. It included the Green Lanterns. It included Martian Manhunter. It included the Atom. It included a whole storyline with Darkseid, like actually Darkseid, like his origins, his rise to power, Darkseid. And Steppenwolf was much different. He was way more alien looking. For some reason, Joss Whedon changed him, made him look sort of human-esque. And so like there are, you know, big changes that Joss Whedon brought on board. And so again, I understand the idea, but I'm not convinced that it would be any better. Now, jump forward to a few days ago. HBO Max is releasing tomorrow, actually, I think, on the 27th of May. Ooh. And HBO Max has announced that next year, 2021, they will be releasing the Snyder Cut. Now, there's been some speculation on how it will be released. I've heard rumor it may be released episodically, like, you know, basically an hour here, an hour there, you know, for a few weeks or whatever. I don't know.
Wow.
And then some
Michael
saying
Jordan documentary.
I know, right?
Every
and then
Sunday for a five whatever. What is in the office, like a 9-week or 9-night events or something like that?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then some people saying it's going to be released like a film. And of course, like all the actors really got excited about this. Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot,
right.
Jason Momoa, Ray Fisher, like all these people have come out in support of this, and that makes sense. That's the film they signed on for. That's the film they shot originally. So again, I understand they probably have some loyalty to Zack Snyder because he cast them in these roles.
It's also the film that would validate their involvement in this whole mess.
Exactly. Like to say, let me show you why I originally liked it. Now, again, it doesn't make it good. It doesn't mean it's going to be good.
Right.
It just means like I'm more attracted to this because I guess Cyborg had a larger role. So I wanted to play this Cyborg. Okay, cool. Yeah. Like I know from the trailers, there was stuff shot with Cyborg's origin story. And in the film we got, it's just like, he's just already Cyborg. So I there's a lot of missing stuff that like work he did. And so I guess the idea of like playing a character as iconic as Cyborg is, and then most of it being left on the cutting room floor, and then you never getting a sequel because Justice League isn't well received. It's like, man, that sucks. And this is really going to be the only way you're going to get a second shot at it, essentially.
Yeah. Yep.
And so like, I understand the excitement from the actors. I understand, you know, Zach's excited to complete this, and the fans would be excited. Again, my whole thing with this news is, you know, two things. One, we don't know that it's going to be any better. We just don't know that.
Right.
And secondly, from what I'm hearing, it's like another $30 million that Warner Brothers is going to be investing in this.
Yeah, at least.
To complete visual effects that were never finished, like the Darkseid stuff. Like they never finished animating Darkseid.
Right.
Because he wasn't going to be in Whedon's cut, so they never finished it. It went to previs, and that was about it.
Too much time, or not enough time.
Exactly. So they're going to be redoing the vis effects. The actors will be called back to do some additional like dialogue stuff.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be doing any reshoots, or so I hear. But I from what I have heard, Zack Snyder is taking the opportunity to kind of rethink the film.
That was my concern. Like,
yeah, go ahead.
If you are keeping score of this, there's a part of me that's like, it's not just a director's cut, especially if they're going to release it in episodically or whatever. If they're pretty much telling him, because the director's cut is pretty much like, here's some, I mean, it's mostly what this is. It's like, there's stuff I shot, there's the ADR, there's a few things here and there, but it seems to me it's going to be a little bit more like the special editions of Star Wars or those various Blade Runner cuts, where it's going to be like, I want to do a few things here and there to not only like show you scenes you didn't see, but here's my opportunity to retroactively try to improve the movie based on feedback from people who've seen it already.
Right.
And so there's a little bit of like, are we going to cater to some people here?
Well, see, this is my problem with it. It is a little bit of a misnomer because you're assuming, we're watching Zack Snyder's version of what this film would have been, but we're not. We're kind of watching Zack Snyder's reaction to an unreleased film, a poorly received released film, and then like his reaction to being put back in charge. Right. So if he decided like, okay, in the original shooting script, let's say there was like, a 3-page scene with Darkseid's origins or whatever. If that dude wanted, he could animate a 10-page scene. Right? Like a brand new 10-page scene. And technically he's done no extra filming. It's just an animated sequence in there. And that's fully within the realm of possibility. So we're not really seeing what he would have released had nothing happened. Like reverse the clock and the film is shot, locked, and then released. Yeah. That's not the version we're going to see because that version doesn't exist. We're going to see a reactionary version. We're going to see a version where he's saying, man, you know what? The fans really wanted to see Darkseid, and I probably would have cut it out, in the original version because it doesn't matter. I'm going to put it back in because I got to give it to the fans. And so, it doesn't really it kind of doesn't make sense. But look, at the end of the day, I'll of course watch it because it's a new film with Superman in it and Batman in it. But like, it's not really high on my list because I don't trust Zack Snyder. And I'm sorry to anybody that might upset because I know you're out there. You're the people that have been clamoring for this and really wanting this. But I think Man of Steel was passable, and Batman vs Superman just drug those characters into the ground. And I just don't see that like putting Zack Snyder back in charge is really the right move. And also, I think it raises a lot of questions for the future of Warner Brothers and the future of filmmaking to say like, well, so now can the fans just clamor for anything and eventually get it?
Right.
Like now I've seen people like on Instagram saying like, we need the air cut of Suicide Squad. And I'm like, well, guys, you have to draw the line somewhere. Like these are bad films, and I understand that you want them to be better, and you think if the studio didn't interfere at all, they'd be better. I believe that if Sony hadn't interfered with Sam Raimi's vision for Spider-Man 3, that film would have been better. But I would be an idiot to like demand Sony give Sam Raimi $50 million to overhaul Spider-Man 3. Yeah. It's done. It's over. You have to move on. And then the other big question that I think this still raises is with Warner Brothers' whole DC universe is they seem to have they still don't have a vision for this DC franchise, right? Like you have the one-offs like Joker, and you have Birds of Prey, which is still built on the back of Zack Snyder's universe. Yeah. But then you have things like Wonder Woman, which is actively trying to distance itself from Zack Snyder's universe. And then like now you're having Matt Reeves' Batman, which has nothing to do with it.
Completely moved on.
Right. And so I'm like, look, either we move on and we accept new things because the old things didn't work, or we get stuck in the past and give money to people who, I mean, I don't know. Let's be honest. They made a movie that is in the past. It's not a current thing anymore. And I just don't know. I just don't know that this is the right move. But again, all that said, I will watch it and we'll review it on the show. I'll talk about it. I'll tell you what I think. But and you know what? Maybe it'll be better than the version we got. Maybe it'll be more watchable. Maybe I will enjoy it more. The problem still remains. I don't trust that this is going to be the definitive Justice League in the way that like the Avengers over at MCU is sort of the definitive Avengers now. Yeah. Like, I just don't think Zack Snyder could ever have delivered based on those casting choices, those, let's be honest, like aesthetic choices, costumes and villain and everything else. I just don't think he would have delivered a definitive Justice League. And so that's still the hurdle it has to cross. But again, he could do anything he wants at this point. So, who knows?
Justice League Doom is still my favorite Justice League movie.
It's a great movie. My favorite Justice League movie is the 3-part Justice League episode, Star-Crossed. And it's like an hour and a half, it's 3 episodes combined or whatever. And 3 or 4, maybe it's, anyway, who cares? But yeah, I mean, that's probably my favorite thing. And then, but Justice League Doom is up there because it has a great voice cast and
good voice cast, good story.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then there's Justice League New Frontier, which is a better book than it is a movie. But if you're, if you want to watch the movie, watch the movie. It's a great movie. And so, there are Justice League options out there that I think are more definitive than what Zack Snyder is going to give us. So all that to say, we'll see how this all pans out. I hope it doesn't like set a precedent for fans thinking they can like bully studios into giving them things.
Right.
So we'll see. I mean, because the last thing we need is all of the like angry Last Jedi fanboys, like, or non-fanboys to be like, remove it, give us the J.J. Abrams version of The Last Jedi. And then, suddenly JJ's making another Star Wars movie that'll plug in somewhere. And then everything just gets convoluted.
And also, I mean, the shoe on the other foot, like, I mean, that's just to jump ahead of anybody's, probably first response to this discussion, that goes for the Marvel movies as well. Like it's always been, our belief that fan service should never be the guiding principle in filmmaking. It can be fun. It can be fun, icing on the cake. But what's always made the Marvel films good is filmmakers saying, here's what we like from the comics. So, that might align with what fans like, but it's not the same as fan service. Because fan service tends to not actually serve the story. It's just there to be like, oh, I know that. But what's always made those films good is filmmakers saying, here's the kind of story I want to tell. Here's the characters I want to tell it with. And then Kevin Feige and Disney going like, that sounds cool and sounds like something that we haven't done before. And which is the opposite of fan service. You can't service something that doesn't exist already.
And let's be honest, like when you adapt something to a different medium, like from comics to film, things have to change, right? Like Captain America in tights wasn't going to work on the big screen.
Right.
And we all understand that. But at the same time, I probably should have picked like an actual story thing, but whatever, that an aesthetic change. But all that said, like, what really I think people sell this short is you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Like there's a difference between fan service and faithfully adapting. And so what I think the difference is, Kevin Feige set out to, again, not just service fans, but to faithfully adapt as faithfully as possible while adapting these characters. And so you have like a Tony Stark that feels like he's ripped out of the comics, and he's a little different.
Yeah.
But he like takes on the spirit of that character, and he sort of became Tony Stark and is the definitive Stark now. And as much as I mean, I love Henry Cavill as Superman. I really do. I wish they'd give him something good to do with it. But at the end of the day, like, what Zack Snyder, I think, tried to do was he wasn't worried about faithfully adapting. He was worried about putting his own spin on it. And that's exactly what I think Kevin Feige steered clear of. It was like, yeah, we're going to do our own thing and create our own continuity, but there's no point in just changing, like reinventing the wheel, because these characters have worked for so long. We're just going to have like Spider-Man, and it's just Spider-Man. I don't have to do anything to Spider-Man. He's just Spider-Man. And so that's why I think I'm like removed from this Zack Snyder thing, because his Superman isn't Superman. His Superman is his Superman. It's not DC's Superman, and it's not my Superman. It's Zack Snyder's Superman. And anyway, whatever. But yeah, I think, I don't know. I don't know how this one's going to shake out.
Do you want to talk about Jumanji?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about Jumanji, but let's talk about it.
Jumanji real quick.
You hear something?
Huh?
Spencer.
Huh?
What?
Who are you?
Oh my God. You're Spencer's grandfather.
Are we in Florida?
And you?
Milo Walker. Did I die and turn into some kind of a small, muscular Boy Scout?
Are we dead?
Bethany?
No!
Rich?
Have you seen either of these films, the last two?
I have seen I keep wanting to call it the first one, but it's the second one. I've seen the new Jumanji from 2017, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So yes, that's the second Jumanji, but technically the third in the series, because I think Zathura is still considered canon.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I heard something about Jack Black. I almost said Zach Black, whatever. Jack Black said something to the effect of like, this is the fourth film in the franchise. So evidently he's including Zathura.
Wow.
Anyway, all that said,
okay.
Which I never saw that. I
saw Zathura.
That was Favreau, wasn't it?
That was Favreau. That was
okay.
That was partially why they picked him to direct Iron Man.
Really?
I think either Feige said that, someone saw that, but he had made Zathura, and that was like more evidence to them that he could do effects movie or whatever. Like he could handle. Sure. Yeah. I remember. I mean, I saw Zathura. I mean, that was like 2005 or 6, so I was like 14 or whatever.
Sure.
No, I was older than that. Anyway, I was a teenager, and so I was I think I watched it in a big group, and I wasn't paying too much attention to it. But I remember thinking like, oh, it's fun. I remember it being fun.
Sure.
So yeah.
So this film, the fourth in the franchise, is written and directed by Jake Kasdan.
Returning.
Yeah, returning.
Okay,
and yes,
good.
He's the son of Lawrence Kasdan.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's always good to see a director, like a writer-director return, and kind of live with these characters for a while. And so to catch you up, Jumanji is now a video game. And so these characters, these four friends, is it four? 1, 2, 3, 4. Four friends that take on these avatars in this video game, and so notably the avatars are Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, and Karen Gillan, and so this film adds to that roster, but that's the main four, and so. You go on a video game quest, like that's the plot.
Right.
The plot here, specifically, our main character whose name I don't even know, Spencer, I think, is sort of missing being Dwayne Johnson. He's missing being Bravestone, and so he wants to kind of relive that, and he messes around with the game again and gets sucked in, so his friends have to go in after him. However, this time they all get shuffled because they don't get the chance to pick their avatars. They just kind of end up randomly in their bodies, which is a lot of fun. In the first film, you get to see Jack Black sort of behave like a teenage girl.
Right.
In this film, he is inside he is he's Fridge, the football playing jock, and so he's stuck in this body that can't do a jumping jack, and like so that's funny. And you kind of get to see the different versions of these characters, and they all get to play a little different, and Yeah. So look, this film, I think I enjoyed it less than the last one. I didn't like super love the last one, but I thought it was fresh and I thought it, was kind of fun. This kind of rehashes a little bit of what that last one was, and kind of doesn't capture that same charm. It just feels like we're doing it again. And then we've got a couple newcomers here. So in the game, they are now Bravestone and Kevin Hart's character Mouse, but now internally they are Danny DeVito and Danny Glover. And so Danny DeVito and Danny Glover are like a feuding old, like business. They were old business partners, and so they're funny, but you kind of lose the Danny DeVito-ness of it because you have like Dwayne Johnson playing Danny DeVito, and it's to okay results, I guess. Yeah. And then another added character in this is Awkwafina. She is an avatar that one of the characters controls, and so we get to see Awkwafina act like different characters, and there's some fun stuff to it. I mean, it's another funny movie. I thought the last one was funny. This one's also funny. It's built sort of it's built on the relationship between Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart, and just watching them play off each other, which is always funny. And then it's kind of like punctuated by Jack Black's.
Those two are like the new Happy Madison crew. It's just,
it's true.
You can tell there's like, I would just love it if I could just make movies with Kevin Hart for the rest
Let's
of my
just
career.
Do another one.
It's just that's their whole thing now. Like, that spy movie they did or whatever.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, they just found their niche.
Yeah, and I think Kevin Hart was in Hobbs and Shaw as a cameo.
Oh, was he? God, Jesus. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure.
They're like I don't know, did they talk about doing a Twins remake?
That would be a great idea.
I either heard that or I just thought of that.
Okay, well, you might want to copyright that because that would be great.
That'd be perfect, though.
It really would. I was never a big Kevin Hart fan until I saw these films. Like, I really enjoy him in this.
Yeah.
I
used to extremely dislike Kevin Hart, and and now I extremely respect him a lot, actually.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
And I think he's funny, and I mean, look, Dwayne Johnson is likable and charismatic, and he's great in this role too.
Yeah.
And it's just fun to watch them play different characters, and get to mess around. So, and they each play a few different characters in this, which is fun. I think ultimately, again, I like the first one better. It felt fresh. It felt original. This one feels a little bit like living off the success of the last one. And then there's this weird moment where I was watching it with my wife, and they do like a needle drop moment where there's like a fight scene over this, I forget what song it is, but it's like a 70s, 80s pop song. And we both were like, whoa, this is trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy really hard. And it was a Karen Gillan fight scene, and it was just like really on the nose. Like you can just, it just was like, was Guardians of the Galaxy. And so that took me out a little bit. It just didn't, I think bottom line, it just didn't feel as fresh.
Sure.
It felt a little more like either it was copying itself or it was copying something else.
I remember like seeing when they were like taking set photos, making it. I remember thinking like, oh my God, that's quick. That's quick to make another one of these. Yeah,
it's true. And I think they were kind of fast tracking another one until the virus. And so, they are working on it. I know, Jake Kasdan is working on it.
Take this time to work on the script.
I'll tell you this. And you might want to just like scrub forward just a little bit because I'm going to spoil one little quick thing. Mm-hmm. Do you mind, Hooper?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. So
my memory is shit. It's okay.
So I won't even spoil the specifics. There is a cameo in this film by a performer from the first Jumanji, like the Robin Williams Jumanji. Mm-hmm. And so it seems like what they're doing is trying to bring it full circle, right? Like we've spent a couple of movies where they're going into the game. It seems like what they may be doing next is bringing the game back out the way that it was in Robin Williams' Jumanji, and I'm okay with that. I think that that's a cool little like shake it up move. Again, it can make it feel fresh. It can make it feel like it's doing something, even though it's not original, it can make it seem like, well, we've never seen Dwayne Johnson do that. Right. And so it can feel that way. So I'm all on board with that. And I kind of have this like soft spot for like world building. Yeah. So when they introduce this character, this cameo, and it hints at a larger world for Jumanji, it really kind of like scratches the itch. So I'm kind of checked out of the film by this point. The emotional beats aren't quite hitting. It's funny, but I'm not really invested. It's like that feeling you get when you like watch a funny video on YouTube. It's like, that's funny, but I don't care emotionally for this. And it's like, you watch a string of Fail Army or whatever. It's like, I'm laughing, but I'm not emotionally invested.
But I feel nothing.
Right. I feel nothing inside. And so that's sort of how I was feeling. I was already checked out by that point. And that really kind of like that kind of scratched the itch because it's not like extensive character stuff that I love or like I'm not invested or anything, but it's like, oh, there's something bigger going on. And so the fifth might be incredibly epic. Like this could be really great. I'm sad that Robin Williams can't be a part of it. Yeah. If they do, kind of tie it back together, I suppose you could bring back Bonnie Hunt or whatever, but like without Robin, it's kind of like, why even do that? Yeah. But all that said, right. Like there's a lot about this movie that's funny and it's entertaining and it's interesting. But it doesn't have any depth really. And like I said, it doesn't feel as fresh. And so that one moment of like, oh, you've really piqued my interest now kind of goes away in time. Yeah. Like I said, not just because there's nothing hooking you in, but also because like, Robin can't be a part of it. Like if you do something cool and fun, Robin won't be there. And that's just like ultimately kind of a bummer. And so I got to give him props for maybe hinting that it might go that way. But, at the end of the day, like you're kind of setting yourself up for failure because he can't be a part of it. So, all that to say, like, it's a fine film. It, like I said, you'll laugh, but you won't feel anything. And I think this time around, they tried to give a little more depth to the not the avatars, but like the characters, right? Like those original 4 kids. And I don't think it landed. Like, I think it felt forced. Like we have to get them all back together. And it also felt forced in that, like, what character arcs they have in their avatar bodies rather than in themselves. Yeah. And that kind of creates like a disassociation. So when you do see them like at the end and like their arc is complete, you kind of, it's kind of weird because they didn't, like, visually they didn't really do it. You know what I mean? And so it's very strange. It's a very strange movie to see this. And anyway, all that to say, I mean, look, who is seeing Jumanji the next level for the character work? Nobody. Everyone's just seeing it because Kevin Hart is small and Dwayne Johnson is large. Right. That's the only reason anybody's seeing this thing is I want to watch Kevin Hart try to get off a camel. Right. Like that's the selling point. And Jack Black acted like a girl. And that's all anyone cares about. So if you just want like a fun, leisurely watch, this is fine. This is a good family comedy and it'll provide some laughs. I hope that what Jake Kasdan does with the next one is give it some of that emotional depth, because I feel like the first had that.
Yeah,
like I feel like Robin Williams' version had that, and I feel like the last version kind of had that. So I don't know, but I hope that whatever they do, they really put some thought into the characters and build something that will last, not just like, oh, it's funny now, but 20 years from now, who cares? Whereas like, this random movie that Robin Williams made in whatever it was, 95,
right?
Like still, like that's a good movie. Yeah. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I'd wager that's a good movie still. And so I hope that these have that same appeal. I think this will be the forgotten one. But yeah, so I don't know. I feel weird in an episode where you give 2001 3.5 stars to give this 3. But I'm going to give it 3 because we don't compare films
I'm
by
sure
their.
It's better paced than 2001.
we don't compare them by their stars.
Sure.
We it's more of a gut reaction. This is 3. It's fine. It's not going to do, like I said, it's not going to change the world. It's not going to win any awards. And 20 years from now, I think it'll be mostly forgotten. But, if you want something to do while you're sitting at home in quarantine or, laid off work or whatever you are, this will provide a little bit of laughter. And I think that's okay right now. So yeah, Jumanji, the next level. It's good. Not as good as the last one. Hopefully not as good as the next one. So yeah.
I've got something for people to probably avoid, but maybe watch.
Okay.
Depending on what they like. I want to talk briefly before we go about Hollywood.
I want to take the story of Hollywood and give it a rewrite.
Ace has a picture that we're very excited about. It's about fame and what Hollywood does to people.
This is our screenwriter, Archie Coleman. Pleasure to meet you.
You're colored. I love it.
Rolling! If we change the way that movies are made, I think you can change the world.
Hollywood is a mini-series on Netflix created by Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan. Ryan Murphy, of course, of Glee and American Horror Story and a couple other TV shows. But this is a 7-episode miniseries, and it takes place in the 40s in Los Angeles, post World War II Hollywood, where a lot of GIs especially were coming back, and a lot of people were clamoring to get into the movies. And let's see here. I'll read partially the premise from Wikipedia to help set this up a little bit. As they try to make it in the film industry, no matter what the cost, each character offers a unique glimpse behind the gilded curtain of Hollywood's golden age, noting entrenched power, challenges to that power, and biases of many kinds that continue to this day. The show is described as exposing and examining decades-old power dynamics and what the entertainment landscape might look like if they had been dismantled. So it's right there in the premise description. I gave this show 2 stars. Didn't piss me off, but I had problems with it that very nearly pissed me off. The show is wish fulfillment. It is, what if in the 40s we made a film starring a black actress, written by a black guy who's also gay, starring a couple of actors who are gay, and we show it sort of making it from production, green light to winning Best Picture, basically, in 1948.
Okay.
And it's a nice sentiment. It's just, since that didn't happen, but we're going to have characters like Rock Hudson and Tallulah Bankhead and Vivian Leigh in this show. We're going to feature people who actually existed, and Hattie McDaniel. But we're going to sort of take artistic liberties with their personal lives and their sex lives, especially. I have a problem with it because there's a cognitive dissonance I can't surmount in this series. I was asked to watch this show, and what I like about it is I think that several of the performances are probably of note. I mean, everyone's acting their ass off in this show, but there's also a very like old fashioned, like starry eyed wonder to the dialogue that sort of feels not contemporary. But then there's other parts of the show where it feels way too modern, like on the nose dialogue, like, yes, I see. When a woman makes a decision, she's being irrational. It's like, okay, it's not a very subtle show. It's just, you throw in lines like that where it's like, I feel like I saw that on a poster at a march. Just stuff like that. It's just, we're going to sort of cram 2020 progressive values and 2020 vision. Oh, we'll see what I did there. We're going to cram that into the 1940s, and we're going to retroactively look at that time in history, but we're also going to like plunge in and change the universe by having some things happen that just didn't happen, but we wish it happened. And it's a what if. Every criticism I've read of the show after seeing it sort of mirrors my own, where most people had problems with artistic liberties and just the fact that the show tries to have its cake and eat it too. It wants to have this old Hollywood nostalgia, but to have an old Hollywood, for Ryan Murphy as a gay man, you have to look back at Hollywood and go, this was a great time in film. And I have nostalgia for this, but as a gay man, I also recognize that there was a lot of, social injustices and, casting biases and prejudices that go into this. And so instead of making a show that seemed to sort of ride that line a little better, it's more just like, what if I could go back and just change, move the progressiveness up 60 years to this date instead. And it just feels false. And I don't know if I am down with it. It's got a good cast. Like I said, you've got David, some people haven't heard of David Cornsweet. Darren Criss is a character. People might recognize him from Glee. Laura Harrier, people would recognize her from Spider-Man Homecoming as, damn it, what's the love interest, Liz. And she's great in this. Joe Mantello, Dylan McDermott's in this show. Jake Picking, Jeremy Pope, acts his ass off in this. Holland Taylor, Samara Weaving's in the show, and Patty LuPone, and an actually really nice turn by Jim Parsons, who's a little too slimy as his piece of shit character he plays, but. A couple of those, but I read afterwards his character actually existed pretty much as is on screen. He was a producer. He was pretty much the gay Harvey Weinstein. Like he discovered Rock Hudson, and with Rock and others like him were abused for decades from this guy. But he had mob connections. He was so well connected in Hollywood that he sort of created like this Hollywood beefcake era where like these manly men went on adventures. And Rock Hudson, as you may know, was gay, and nobody knew that until after he died. And part of it was because of this image that Henry, what's his name? Harry something, crafted. So his character, there's only a couple of characters in the show who actually have an arc, and I appreciated those, but most of it, I'm just sitting here like at one point they're talking about, whether or not to greenlight this film, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it wouldn't play in the South. Yeah, well, blah, 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 something else, blah, blah, blah. Except for, look at what Disney put out last year, Song of the South. Oh, it was certainly not something. It was a racist piece of shit. It's like, did anyone in 1948 say that about Song of the South? I'm sure someone hated it, but was it that blatant? Like, I'm sorry, like we know that now.
Yeah.
But did anyone in the 40s really think that about that film?
Yeah.
So it's just, it's almost like, I just don't like when shows do that. I don't like when we're going to go back and we're going to label stuff as it's happening based on 70 years of perspective. and cultural shifts. I'm not into that. I was explaining to my wife, I'm sorry to monologue so much. I was explaining to my wife, I'm glad that the show is a 2 and not a 3. A 3 is middle of the road, and you can't really argue with a 3 rating, in my opinion. A 3 rating is, this is just, it's fine. And I don't see many problems with it, and you probably won't either. But you also probably won't enjoy it any more than I did, because there's no pendulous, there's nothing about it that can go one way or the other. It's just all fine. It's all par. I think that a lot of people, I don't know, maybe not. I think that you and other of our friends, would not like this show, because that sort of thing bothers me, and I think it would bother you too. So I feel like people who are like me would also rate the show a 2-star. But I also feel that some people might listen to this review and say, I don't know, that sounds great, and watch it, and they'll enjoy it more than I did, because of the choices that are made. They are, at least, you can't feel meh about the show. You either really into what they're doing, or you're really not. And I'm really not. I'm just recognizing it on its other accolades. So yeah, it's on Netflix. If you want to go see it, you can knock it out in a weekend. And especially if you are in a minority group that, and and especially if you've experienced prejudice yourself, you may find extreme catharsis through this show, because you have a lot of characters talking at length about what it feels like to be singled out and othered, and how important representation is to people in film. I just think that there's a lot of ways to get that at other places. You don't necessarily have to get it through this show. But that's the social utility of this show, is it may help people feel less alone, and it might just give an extra emotional oomph to see all these things happening in the 40s. The problem I have with that is it's a fantasy. It's candy. It's just like, but it didn't really happen. And so sooner or later, you're gonna have to sit there and go, yes, but that never actually happened. And I live in a world where that didn't happen, and now I'm depressed about it. So I think you're better off watching more contemporary things that deal with gay rights or racial tension, or I just kept thinking, like, go watch Black Panther. Like, that'll make you feel great. Like, go watch that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like there's a fine line between, like, wish fulfillment in film or in storytelling is fine. Yeah. Right. Like that's fine.
Secondary.
But yeah. And the film has to be believable, and it has to be, I guess like there's only so far that you can suspend your disbelief. Yeah. Right. And there's only so far that you can accept a wish fulfillment, and then, like, when you think about your life, realize that this is all false. Yeah. Right. I'm hard pressed to find another example of that, but I wouldn't say wish fulfillment is by and large, excommunicado from storytelling. Right. However, it is certainly risky.
Yeah. When it's made the primary focus, it's just, it's very, whenever it's obvious what the show is doing, I'm always sort of appalled that, like, it just seems desperate. Like, we're just so, I see somebody is so desperate to fulfill a hole that's somewhere. And again, maybe that's not for me to judge. I'm not in any of those groups of people. So, sure. But I think that those sorts of emotional, cathartic stories exist elsewhere in contemporary Hollywood and contemporary television. To a more effective extent. I just don't think you need to go back to the 40s and retroactively paint over, cultural sins.
I think maybe that is the line that they crossed, which, I haven't seen it. I'm not, I'm just responding to your review here, is like, it's okay to do wish fulfillment. I mean, that's what Spider-Man is. It's every nerd's wish to be a hero. But at the end of the day, it's not rewriting history and asking you to accept a world in which, I don't know, something completely different happened. Like, it's the nerd is the hero. Oh, and also this takes place in 1950 and Abraham Lincoln was still alive, but he was mostly cybernetic. And you know what I mean? Like at that point, it's like, I can't, that's too much. That's too much to do.
Yeah. It loses emotional connection for me because I mean, they're at the 20th Academy Awards and then you have Elia Kazan not winning best director or whatever. It's like,
yeah.
Okay. Well, just the fact that I know that happened though, I know he won. Right. And again, maybe the show didn't do a good enough job in and of itself saying, hey, we're going to do a what if here. Like, what if Hollywood had been just, what if we had figured out how we needed to do things decades ago? Just a little vignette. Maybe it would be on the nose, but as a, from a screenwriting standpoint, I would at least be reading that script, watching that show going, okay, now I know what you're doing. But as I'm watching this, I keep slowly going, what are they?
So do you think it's like a one or the other thing? Like you can do wish fulfillment and you can do like this, but imagine if this was contemporary, right? Like it's contemporary people in a world that is just like ours.
Yeah.
And it's wish fulfillment because, look at how brave and
right.
Like how they're changing,
because people could
cultural
do that
norms,
now.
right?
Yeah. Today you could actually emulate that today.
And then you can also have like alternate history, like Man in the High Castle. Yeah. But to merge the two, wish fulfillment and alternate history is almost too much, and it breaks the illusion.
I think so. To me, it just came off as just like I can't take any of this seriously, and maybe this is cathartic for people on an emotional level because they and their struggles are being represented on screen. I just think that those stories exist and they will continue to be made today. And they weren't made in the 40s. And I just don't know how you can emotionally latch onto that for very long, as a rational person, just having to eventually reconcile this never happened. And it might feel good to watch it and feel validated. But I think a day or two later, you'll go, yeah, but that's not sticking with me. I don't know. I would be curious to know, what people in the gay community would feel or black people or women, especially like about this, I watched it with a woman and it didn't really land for her either. So, I don't know. But I it's, I don't want to say it's not for me because it's for everybody. It's just, it wasn't written specifically for my life experience. But I, as a viewer, I couldn't even really latch on to the characters too much. Yeah, that's not true. I could. There's, but in a general sense, like again, anything that you could take and put on a contemporary story, I latched onto that. Anytime we're going to have a dialogue about how, do you know what it feels like to not be able to walk down the street and hold your lover's hand? It's like, okay, I got that. That's perfectly fine. But I've seen that monologue. I've seen it in other films about civil rights or about gay rights, but then like the 80s, like it's not, I don't know. Everything that was emotionally resonant wasn't new, and it didn't have to be in this context. And it was just kind of frustrating, all said and done. So, again, I think the show's skippable, but I just want to lay out why I think that, because if you happen to like those things, well then, hey, it's on Netflix. Go check it out.
Yeah.
That's it. That is it for tonight.
Sweet.
Yeah. Maybe, so next week, I plan to talk about The Office. I recently finished that entire series.
Nice.
And, I may have, watched a thing or two by then as well. So we'll see little secrets.
Sweet.
If you did like the show and you're listening on iTunes or any other podcast, you can check out the video show. If you like video, on youtube.com/HooperCast. If you're watching on YouTube, you should know that you could have been listening to this days ago as the audio podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. So you can do that. You can follow the social media pages, hang out with us, be part of our group of friends, share movies with us, be part of our conversation, get your opinion heard, especially if you disagree about Hollywood or Jumanji. All right. Good night, everybody. Have a good week. Be safe. Yes.
Happy hunting.
Happy hunting.